Hi, coming to you live from my recovery suite after endometriosis excision surgery. Today I want to talk to you guys about insurance coverage for lipedema removal surgery. And I want to share with you my 5 tips on how to get insurance coverage without the hassle. Before I was at Lift Up Lipedema, I was just a patient like everybody else suffering from late stage 2 lipedema. On a journey just like you guys trying to get insurance to cover my lipedema removal surgeries. After I was successful at using ERISA to get a fair reimbursement on my removal surgeries with Dr. Sue in Tampa, Florida, I decided that I could not in good conscience move forward without sharing all of the vast amount of information that I had learned along the way for free. I had seen the seedy underbelly of the lipedema world, and I could not just turn a blind eye to it. I had learned that the biggest roadblock to our diagnosis and surgical care is not having our own procedure codes that are specific to our condition. So at Lift Up Lipedema was born. I had no idea if it would take off, but it didn't matter because I knew that it was the right thing to do. And my conscience could be clear. It was also a way for me to organize the vast amount of information that I had learned along the way for my own symptom management and recovery strategies. I am very fortunate that I can afford a team of doctors to help me with my medical care. Not everybody is so fortunate. So I want you guys to put my big bucks to good use. During my battle with the insurance carrier that was refusing to reimburse me fairly for my lipedema removal surgery, I met a woman named Leah Fowler. She educated me on all of the really important extra added federal protections to employer-based insurance policies. This federal law is called ERISA, or ERISA. I know her as a dear friend, but you guys probably know her as the feisty insurance lady that spoke at FDRS this year. She's ERISAadvocacy.com and the creator of the ERISA Facts, Not Fallacies Facebook page that is full of free information for patients to help them get started on their lipedema removal surgery reimbursement journey. Leah has over 17 years of experience working ERISA level appeals, and she can also do SPD reviews. When she met me, she was specifically focused with working with just providers, but now she's opened up her arsenal to patients as well. So if you haven't joined our group yet, make sure to save this video and jump over to my bio and go visit the ERISA Facts Not Fallacies Facebook page and become a member. Here are my 5 top tips to get you started and learn how to navigate the ERISA Facebook page without feeling like you're drinking from a fire hose. Tip number 1 is know your summary plan document. Your summary plan document, or your SPD as Leah likes to call it, is the roadmap to all things insurance coverage for your specific insurance plan. All of the things that you need to know to get your fair coverage and all of the information as far as how you will be reimbursed, including your copay, your deductible, and any allowable rates that are determined, are going to be spelled out specifically in your summary plan document. And remember, this document is unique to you. So you could have the same carrier as another patient, but vastly different requirements in a summary plan document. If you have different employers, most likely your SPD might have different terms. And it's extremely important to know what your specific terms are as far as reimbursement goes. To get a copy of this document, you can visit your HR department, or sometimes you can find them on your patient portal that's with your carrier. Make sure you get a current, up-to-date copy. This document is typically large. It contains about 200 pages, and we've seen as much as 300 pages. And whether or not you're protected by ERISA will be in the fine print of this document. And you will be afforded extra protections, which we'll get into later on in this video. Tip number 2 is find a provider. Over on the ERISA page, we have a list of providers for you guys with who's in network, who's out of network, and all of the providers that we have on our Excel sheet are recommended by patients. So all of these providers are lipedema patient approved specialists. Leah felt that this was a very important addition to our Facebook page so that patients could feel confident that when they chose a provider, they would A, know what their insurance coverage would be, but also that other patients were recommending them. None of these surgeons are recommended by Leah. As she said so many times, she is not a lipedema patient and has no business telling us who we should choose. As always, we try to keep this information as up to date as possible for you guys, but it's still super important to go ahead and double check with your HR rep or on your patient portal with your carrier. It's also really important to call the surgeon themselves and ask if they are in network with your insurance provider. Make sure when you do ask them that this is the exact verbiage that you use. Don't just simply ask them if they accept insurance. Many providers accept insurance, but it matters whether they're actually in network with your insurance carrier specifically. So write that down. The provider that you choose should be your decision completely. I chose a provider that happened to be out of network, but I felt most safe with that provider. But full transparency, this did make reimbursement much more difficult. However, if I could do it all over again, I would do it the same way because Dr. Sue was the guy for me. That being said, not everybody's going to have the privilege to be able to pay up front for these very expensive procedures. And we see you. Leah and I understood that there would be some patients who would absolutely need to see somebody that was in network with their carrier if at all possible. So that is why we created the provider list for you guys. And we support you guys no matter who you choose for your surgeries. And for the surgeons who've decided to take a extraordinarily low rate for their surgeries to be in network, we appreciate you more than anything. Tip number 3 is medical necessity. This is something that I wish I had understood so much better when getting started. Whether or not you're going to need medical necessity or pre-authorization or predetermination, as some carriers call it, is completely dependent on your specific summary plan document. And you may have the same exact carrier as another patient and have completely different terms surrounding whether or not you'll need a medical necessity review. If you're seeing a surgeon who is in network, their office will typically do this process for you, and you'll just need to turn over anything that they request from you as far as proof of conservative measures go. Conservative measures typically include wearing compression, getting manual lymphatic drainage massage, and diet and exercise strategies that are required by your carrier. However, if you're seeing an out-of-network doctor, you're going to have to look up your own plan requirements in your own summary plan document. But again, this is something that your HR person can absolutely help you with. Some companies also provide third-party organizations that help patients through their medical necessity review. So it's always a good idea to speak to your employer and see what services are offered to you. I actually personally did not need to go through medical necessity in order to get my surgery covered out of network, and I wish that I had known that when I started this whole process, but I was basically trying to follow other patients that had the same carrier as me and do the same things that they did to get coverage. I wish that I had understood this better before I went through so much emotional anguish for the months that I did trying to get pre-authorization. My situation is fairly rare. Most carriers do require that you get medical necessity for these surgeries, but it's still something that I wish I would have known when I was starting out the process. Tip number 4 is knowing your allowable rates before ever stepping foot in the surgery room. This step is so important, I almost feel like it should be step number 1. The allowable rate is the amount of money that your insurance carrier is actually willing to reimburse for your surgery. It is not the same necessarily as the billed rate, especially if you go out of network for your surgery. This amount is based off of whatever terms are used in your SPD to calculate it and the code that is used to bill for lipedema surgery. Some examples of how allowable rates are determined would be using fair health, like geographical location, or a percentage of Medicare or Medicaid. Unfortunately, the codes that we're using to bill for lipedema surgery are cosmetic procedure codes, and Medicare and Medicaid do not accept them. And this means for patients that the rates that are being allowed in the United States are far lower than what these surgical procedures actually cost in real life. You heard that right. In the year 2025, a women's-specific progressive disease in the United States in which surgery is the only treatment for doesn't have its own specific surgical codes. Patients in the United States today are having to use procedure codes and diagnostic codes that are not specific to their condition. We're basically using secondhand codes to get diagnosed and to have our surgeries reimbursed. For patients, this means that our disease is less well recognized in the medical community, and we have a much tougher time getting funding for further research and development on lipedema. And our surgical allowable rates are way lower than what our surgeries actually cost, by about a third. This is major discrimination in my opinion, and done intentionally. Europe, for example, is updated to the ICD-11 manual, which includes codes that are specific to lipedema for both diagnostic and surgical procedures. And even if the United States didn't want to update to the ICD-11 manual, we add new codes to the ICD-10 manual every year. Lipedema-specific codes could have been added yesterday. But that's a fight for another day. The thing that you guys need to take away from this is that the allowable rate may be demonstratively lower than what your billed rate is if you go out of network for surgery. And if your SPD states that percentage of Medicare is how your allowable rates are determined, they're going to need to give you a substitute way to calculate your allowable rate before you go and have surgery in the form of a fee schedule based on ERISA, which is federal law. Medicare and Medicaid do not accept our codes, so there is no way for them to calculate a rate off of something that doesn't exist. Tip number 5 is submitting your claim. You finally had your life-changing surgery and now it's time to submit your claim. Again, if you're in network with your doctor, then your doctor's office will do this for you. You're going to be responsible for any copay or deductible that you have left for the calendar year. But if you've gone out of network, you're going to be responsible for your copay, your deductible, and anything that was billed outside of the allowable rate. And this is why it is so important to know what your allowable rates are before you go and have your surgical procedure done. To give you an example from personal experience, I was billed nearly $30,000 for my uppers and knees 360 surgery with Dr. Sue, and my insurance carrier thought that it would be fair after my deductible and copay to reimburse me only $2,000. But because my plan was a self-funded PPO, my husband's employer had the power to overturn that decision. And because my carrier refused to produce a legitimate fee schedule or a way that they had used to calculate those rates that they used to reimburse me with, we had a shot at a better reimbursement. But that was only thanks to Leah, and that's an exception and not the way that it's always going to work for every patient that comes up after me. And my out-of-network experience is not the exception. I am the rule. I have met hundreds of patients who have had this same experience going out of network for their lipedema surgeries. And some patients don't have a specialist that's in network for them to see. Because of the fact that we're having to use these cosmetic procedure codes, a lot of surgeons who are listed for them as in network aren't actually lipedema specialists. This is not only dangerous, but it's predatory. And it's not just patients that this affects. I spoke to a lipedema specialist this year who's actually one of the authors on our standard of care at FDRS, and he told Leah and I that he was attempted to be reimbursed $1.61 for his expertise and time for a lipedema surgery he did this year. So it's no wonder that a lot of our specialists aren't willing to be in network for us. I hope you feel empowered by the information that I gave you in this reel. We still have a really long way to go as a country to treating lipedema patients fairly. But we do have some options, and we do have extra federal rights in the form of ERISA. I want you guys to understand the realities and limitations of pursuing lipedema removal surgery. In my next reel, I want to talk about some options that might be available to you based on your SPD as far as getting in out-of-network doctors considered as in-network, in the form of single case agreements with gap exceptions, and the difference between a gap exception and a single case agreement. As always, all of the information on my page can absolutely be taken to your doctor. Come follow me at @liftuplipedema to see how patient education is changing the game, and look up hashtag cheat codes to coverage to find out more information that I've put out there about insurance coverage for lipedema surgery. And a special thank you to true advocates like Leah Fowler for creating the most amazing Facebook page for patients to help us exercise our rights in health insurance. If you or your provider would like to work with Leah, make sure to visit her website at www.erisaadvocacy.com. And don't forget to visit our Facebook group, ERISA Facts Not Fallacies, ERISA Facts Not Fallacies, and I do have a link over in my bio. I love you and I support you guys no matter what your lipedema journey looks like. And if you choose removal surgery, I hope you have the same freedoms that I have found after my surgery with Dr. Sue. I'm forever grateful. Bye.